Hey guys, so right out of the gate, the first couple minutes of the episode sees Ren just finally opening up about his own weakness and by proxy just kind of letting out his frustration and anger about the current state of affairs, followed up by him asking Mikihisa what's honestly I consider to be $1 million question, which is why the adults seem to be putting this burden on their children. And while Mikihisa's answer isn't very comforting about whether or not it's possible to defeat how, what he's saying does kind of carry over into the ever-present theme of the series, which is the following generation will always be the ones to surpass those that came before them. Which, granted, isn't anything new. We've seen this as a common theme in a lot of stories, but Shaman King, I feel, is one of the few where where the whole theme of the next generation is pervasive through the entire narrative of the story, because every aspect is about passing on the responsibility and power, because as Mikihisa put it, despite how powerful it is, everyone has their ceiling, and despite how powerful he is, he's already reached his, and which, despite contrary to what we've seen, is not strong enough to defeat Hao. And I like how just in those simple words we can see that how Mikihisa saying that and Ren experiencing the fight in itself has already kind of humbled Ren and given him clarity on just how much further he can go, regardless of what what means he uses, because I think for Ren a lot of it was basically I can get by on my own power, I can get by on my own strength, I just need to grow stronger using that. But he realized that he hasn't even reached the peak of his ceiling yet, so in that sense it's good for Ren to realize this. Of course, one of the bigger things to also come out of this episode for Ren is that we see Ren's group basically get cornered by House followers and the patch officials who serve under him, which is Magnet and Nikrom, where Ren is, for lack of a better term, forced to directly face a demon from his past after learning that Crom, the patch official he killed, was Nikrom's older brother. And this is something I personally consider a huge advantage that the reboot has over the original anime, and honestly in some respects the manga as well, in how just on a technical level they visualize Ren thinking back on killing Crom, because in the latter's case, to the best of my knowledge, I don't think it was ever properly established that Crom and Nikrom were brothers. I mean, it might have been passing, but when you get down to it, Nikrom, I think in the original anime, he just kind of joined Hao for reasons, as far as I know. And because of that, the whole thing about Ren killing Crom in the original just kind of dropped off without being addressed. But here, we are actually seeing Ren being forced to not only face up to his past actions head on, but also coming to terms with the reality that for however much he has changed, there are pretty much parts of his past that are never truly going to go away. All he did was just bury them, and which is why Hao even took such an interest in him to begin with, because Hao pretty much Hao has talent, as we know, for digging up the past and using people's pasts in order to manipulate them, and that's exactly what made Ren such an easy mark to begin with. And but I also like how Ren having to face these consequences and face just his past in this moment of pretty much facing Nikrom and the others. It is kind of also serves as a more natural narrative through line towards strengthening his pretty much will to endure what's ahead. And as I said, the anime's version of how they visualize Ren's like bubbling trauma of not only trauma bubbling to the surface of not only like learning the truth but also just reliving that moment in his mind, I feel was handled better in the reboot, because from what I remember even from reading the manga, it didn't give any sort of visual dynamic of him reliving that moment. But here we're actually seeing like Ren actually like you see him frozen in fear. You see him like forced to deal with the fact that he's facing he's pretty much facing the younger brother of the man he killed. Like it's all coming back to him in one single moment, and again, I loved how it was visualized. Now, with that being the case, there is an elephant in the room we need to address, which is Peyote's return. And this is one of those things where I've tried not to get too hung up on past scenes or moments that were cut from the reboot, but this is one time where I definitely feel the effects, because if you'll remember, in one of my past reviews, I mentioned how an episode had cut out a small scene with Peyote like recovering in a hospital bed, and for however small, it did show a glint of humanity within him. Like it shows that he's someone who not only serves Hal, but is also someone who isn't necessarily a mustache twirling villain. Like isn't a mustache twirling villain. Just pretty much despite what his outer like personality and appearance portrays. So knowing that, as weird as it is to say, despite the fact that not having that moment should make his character feel more consistent, it actually feels more jarring for me to see Peyote jump back onto the scene, acting the exact same as always, and not having that little bit of emotional reinforcement to his character from that very small moment. Again, I know I'm kind of getting a little caught up in the technicals here, but I do feel just not having that scene did kind of like dampen his character a little bit. Of course, with that being said, I also love how this episode could basically be described as everything going to shit. Like this was like anything that like how Horo, Chaco, and Ren were told about like the worst case scenario and what kind of people that they were dealing with. Everything they were told would happen happened in this very moment. And seeing Ren like pretty much nearly being killed, and Horo and Chaco having to face like Hao's men with very little Furioka to spare, is all in all like the absolute worst case scenario, but also the best case scenario for them to truly realize what it is they're up against. Like this is the type of threat that Hao, if this is the type of threat that Hao poses, you can that Hao's men poses. Like you can only imagine the kind of power that Hao himself has, and it's forcing them to realize that. But also one other thing. But with that said, you can tell what this is pretty much setting up for Horo and Chaco. It's setting up that they are going to, at least in some form or another, like awaken their powers in some way. And I'll be, yeah, I'm really curious to see how the reboot is going to handle like a lot of this stuff, with Hao, Ren, and Chaco going forward, because it's good stuff, honestly. I honestly I can't wait to see like a lot of stuff from this point onward animated now. Of course, one other thing before that is we see Anna we see like Hao's goth girl troop or whatever ambush the kids that Mickey Hisa brought with him, and from there we also see Anna and Jun jump in onto the scene to protect those kids. And honestly, I was just so happy, like of everything else, just seeing that image of them like face the girls. I just love seeing Pyron again, because it feels forever since I've last seen him like do anything in the story, and I'm just happy to see him again. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I got for this review. Enjoy the video. Like, comment, subscribe. I'm on Twitter, Crunchyroll. Share the notification bell, hit the subscribe button, and just share the video around, guys. Dark Knight of MMA, signing off. Later, everyone.